Hey guys, this video is just about what I've gotten out of Fromm so far. So I guess I'll just start at the beginning of the class. So in the first day, we wrote down everything that we relate to. It's like other people, ourselves, to the material in class, to trees, to ethics, to phones, kind of everything, I feel like. And I found it to be an interesting exercise because I realized that how you relate to everything, it's kind of a big deal. It plays a very big role in your life. And we talked about how if there's some sort of disconnect between how you relate to things and the way things are, and that if your ethics are not compatible with nature, that you're cooking a recipe for neurosis, and I would say misery in many cases. Like if I'm out here thinking I should be a bird, and that's just not really possible, well, I'm kind of stupid. Like, this is a black and white example, but, like, really, it's something to think about. Like, is the way I think things should be, is it natural? Is it possible? Is it real? And, yeah, so one thing that we read that Eric Fromm talks about is, like, how you relate to loving. And he talks about this having versus being mode thing, this concept that he has. And I found this interesting because, if you think about it, love is not really, it's not an object. It's not like it's some physical possession that you own. And so Fromm kind of claims that it is action. And so he says that, like, love is caring for, it's responding to, affirming, it's life-giving. All this is through action. And I really like the term life-giving, because it seems like it's helping the things be the best manifestation of exactly what they are, and enjoying them for exactly that. And also understanding that the thing you love is dynamic, it evolves, it changes, and that it's not something to be locked down on and controlled, which I would say is kind of the having mode, which is like making something what your neurosis thinks it should be, kind of taking the life out of it. And one thing he talks about is how marriage kind of puts a lot of people into the having mode. They go from taking action to show their love to this other person to just stopping. Because they've won the person, they've got the situation locked down and controlled, the game is over. There's nothing left to be won, so the people just stop loving because they think they have it. When really they don't, it's not something you have, it's something you be, according to Fromm. So another thing that we talked about was Joseph Campbell's diagram of the psyche. And one thing that within it that I think is important to touch on is kind of the box centered within your conscious awareness. And it's kind of the view / the concepts that you analyze your experiences with. And we've talked about how learning makes this box bigger. And it's part of why we find learning to be challenging, because we're constantly finding out that the way we think things work isn't necessarily the case. And so I wish I would have been aware of this kind of concept as a freshman, because things would have been a lot easier. I would not have tried to question everything and disagree with everything that I was taught. I would have just let it expand my box instead of fighting it to try to maintain the little box I had, because really, what do I know? Like trying to argue with these teachers, So one thing I've also noticed recently is how entrenched people get in their boxes. And we kind of talked about this, how guys like MLK, Gandhi, even you, Mr. Swires, all these people out there doing stuff that people's boxes can't necessarily handle. And it causes them to fight back. And for the past month, I've been arguing with someone. And I'm certainly not going to claim I'm an expert of understanding every situation, but the thing we were arguing over, I knew for a fact that the person I was arguing with was absolutely clueless regarding the situation, and that I knew it pretty well. And I saw that their view was going to end up creating some harm, so I took it upon myself to kind of make their box a bit more accommodating of reality. And it was so hard. We argued. I argued with this person for probably a month. I wrote a 3.5-page essay for this person. I sent this person videos I'd made in the past. I've done all this stuff. And, they finally did end up seeing where I was coming from in the end, and it worked out. But it is so hard to expand these boxes, and in myself included. And so one thing I would advise is to don't let ideas precede reality and sculpt it. Let reality sculpt your ideas. When I become an old guy someday, if I ever get to that point, I don't want to be someone whose worldview was crafted in some reality 45 years ago that no longer exists. Certainly draw from your past experiences, but don't get so caught up in them that you lose sight of the present situation. That's all I really have to say about that. But another thing we talked about, that we read, is this packet about Hermeticism, called Knowing Beyond Knowing. And I actually first read this packet back in Peaceful Warrior a bit over a year ago, and my first thought was, why have I never heard of Hermeticism before? All we talk about are the same three religions that will have kind of a lot of the same fundamental assumptions, that's all there is. But I found this thing on Hermeticism to be very interesting, and I think it fills kind of a void that we have in our contemporary culture. We very often chase concrete, logical answers to everything, and we think awful lot about how things should be. People think every single thing should change, should be this way, how they think it should be. And with Hermeticism, though, it's saying that contradiction is the only way of reaching the divine, because it's beyond the limitations of human logic and reason. And they use contradiction to confuse, provoke, and kind of poke holes in the box to expand it. And so contradiction is not some bad, irrational, stupid thing. They would say it's quite the opposite, which is interesting. And then another thing they talked about that I really liked is this whole idea of knowledge, and that it's constantly moving, and you have to constantly work to keep up with it, and that you have to cast off the old knowledge to stay with the present knowledge. And this kind of ties into the whole box thing I was talking about earlier, because I'm not sure how much of anything is really static and easily simplified and locked down. In our culture, we often try to lock down everything with labels. You see someone oh, yep, they're that kind of person. I know every single thing about them. When probably my biggest realization during Peaceful Warrior was that I hardly know anything at all. And realizing that was absolutely huge, because I discovered that I was so bogged down with all these ideas about everything that I didn't really see much of anything. And once I got past that, my view was a whole lot better. So moving on to our atmosphere of the class, I think it's pretty good. I think as a whole we're pretty content to let things be and just be present and be open. I do think we go a little hard with the debates in class maybe. And I think ideas are just ideas, they're not much of anything, so maybe try not to get so attached and fight with them,